Hey everyone, welcome back to DWeb Decoded, a podcast by Filecoin Foundation exploring the intersection of blockchain and the data economy. I'm your host, Aaron Stanley, and today I'm joined by Arrash Yasavolian, who's the CEO of Taoshi, which is using BitTensor's decentralized infrastructure to create a proprietary trading network. This episode will actually be the first in a mini-series exploring the BitTensor Economy, which is one of the most interesting plays in the decentralized AI meets blockchain space at the moment. So today we're going to be diving into this and talking about how this all fits into the Filecoin vision of building robust infrastructure for a data-powered economy. With that, I'd like to welcome Arrash to the show.
Thanks, Aaron, for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So yeah, to get started, I would love for you to maybe just introduce yourself quickly and maybe just give us some context on just what exactly BitTensor is.
Yeah, so Arrash, I'm the CEO of Taoshi. We run one of the subnets on BitTensor, Subnet 8, which is the proprietary trading network. So it's essentially a decentralized prop firm. And BitTensor in general is essentially composed of 128 subnets. And every subnet is competing against one another for emissions. So they're essentially trying to get attention from the network. And essentially what every subnet is creating is its own commodity. So for us, for example, it's trading signals, right? So all the miners are competing with their own strategy across various markets and trying to provide us the best risk-adjusted returns. However, on another subnet could be compute. They could be providing GPUs, right? Or serverless compute or inference. And so it's really, in terms of what you can create, in terms of a subnet and the commodity produced, just is up to what you can create in terms of incentive mechanism, alignment of your miners to produce that commodity. And so it's pretty limitless in terms of what you can create, what you can drive, and just some background on why I got so interested in this space. I got into BitTensor in, I think it was July 23. And what I was looking for, I'd been in crypto since 2017. And what was so fascinating was just seeing all these different cryptocurrencies emerge, and then just learning about the space and realizing that marketplaces of competition are probably one of the best usages of blockchain technology, with different participants providing you a service. And I got really into Arrash network, which I thought was really fascinating, which is providing compute. And it was similar, right? It was a compute marketplace. And I was like, man, if someone comes and does this at scale and allows pretty much anyone to create any kind of marketplace of competition to create a commodity, that's going to be huge. And that's really what BitTensor is. Anybody can launch a subnet, anybody can compete as a miner, and anybody can compete as a validator. And so it's in terms of structure, very similar to Bitcoin, if you're familiar with it. We have validators and miners. Miners provide trying to solve a problem, validators validating that. That's kind of how every subnet is composed, and it can create its own incentive mechanism, similar to how Bitcoin has its incentive mechanism, who can solve the problem the fastest, right? In terms of hash. But in terms of this world of BitTensor, the subnet owner or creator comes up with the problem, and the miners solve that problem the most efficiently, and then validators validate it. So you can imagine every subnet is creating its own commodity, its own marketplace of competition, and they decide what their competition is. So they're kind of the ruler of the game, right? It's kind of like creating like your own mini game.
That's super interesting. And we're going to be diving into that a bit more here. But before we do that, we'd love to just get some personal background on yourself. Like what's your, what was your formation? Like, how did you end up in this world of crypto and then into BitTensor ultimately?
Yeah, I got really drawn in, was late 2017, which was the bull market kind of hype. And I remember just being so fascinated with the space. I had no knowledge really of it. And then really during the bear market, I just learned a lot. I mean, I just tried to pick up as much as I could about, I think I researched like the top 400 cryptocurrencies and just like where was the value, right? And where could the value be? So got into it then and just started doing a lot of research. And again, just figuring out, where I thought the most value was, which is marketplaces and commodity production. So, and then pretty much my background, I had worked in tech for about 15 years, got into quant trading, building my own trading strategies, and then kind of just realized that there's a missing component here, which is we don't as a quant, you don't really know, like once you create your strategy, you really have two diverging paths, which is you can go create a hedge fund and take your strategy to market on the hedge fund, raising capital, getting clients, and that's extremely expensive. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, months of time getting it offshore in say like BVI or Cayman Islands. And then, having to deal with clients and then, raise capital from them essentially. Or the other route was prop firms. And prop firms are pretty much predatory companies that are trying to get your registration fee. Not great either. And so we didn't really have, there's not really a great option there. And so I was like, man, what if anybody could come compete for capital, or, essentially bring their collateral, come compete with their risk adjusted strategy and earn rewards. And so that was the basis of what we created on SN8.
Very cool. Very cool. And with this idea of kind of like decentralizing trading strategies and trying to kind of, allow people, like anybody, to kind of come to the table with their strategy and compete with it. And then tying that back into your previous comments about how, some of these marketplace environments have been perhaps like maybe one of the overlooked use cases for crypto. I mean, as I was prepping for this, I was even just thinking back of like, I think there's this project called Numerai back in, like 2017, 2015-ish, like real OG project, which I'm not even sure if it's still around anymore, but it was founded by this quant named like Richard Crabe, who is one of these like wonderkind guys. And this is kind of like the same idea where they're trying to basically bring, take these, these guys who have strategies, get these folks like out of their little, like their siloed nutshell and like, put these things to the test. Right. I'm not really sure what the status of that platform is. It just sort of, came to me as I was prepping for this. But the question I wanted to lead into with that is like, why is BitTensor such like a unique platform for launching something like this? Like, I mean, we've seen things like Polymarket and other types of prediction marketplaces popping up lately. And obviously those are not on BitTensor yet, but like, why is BitTensor a really perfect fit for like this particular use case?
Yeah, yet is the big part of that, because eventually, I think things like that are actually already being created on certain subnets. So they will be. I mean, that's kind of the reality, is that it will be pretty much consumed by BitTensor, in my opinion, on a subnet. That could be a single subnet is Polymarket. I think SN123 is kind of already doing that. So I can kind of just name subnets at this point, but yeah, subnet, it's just a single subnet slot out of the 128. That's actually doing something very similar. And so it's actually like a perfect, like Numerai and Akash and all these other kind of players, what makes BitTensor so unique is we're learning from historical projects and making better versions, right? It's essentially like those were like the V1. BitTensor will create the V2 through V99, right? So even if one subnet fails, another subnet's going to learn from them or create a better version, because everything is open source. So you're going to get continuous improvement in terms of commodity production, which is also really fascinating. So, for example, there's been there was one storage subnet that was created in the beginning, and then another storage subnet came and created a better version, and another one came and created a better version. So we're getting iteration, which is really fascinating. We're also getting competition in the same spaces. So like compute, there's multiple subnets doing compute and competing against each other, and then you get best price, which is wonderful, right? So it's kind of like how can you create the most efficient commodity with the best tokenomics, right? That's really what you're, at the end of the day, you're creating on BitTensor. And when you really think about any commodity produced, right, it's going to require some layer of AI. That's like the coordination layer to get the most efficient or best solution. So at the end of the day, almost any miner competing is going to use some level of AI to compete most efficiently. So the best miners, essentially, for example, let's just take what we do on Subnet 8 with the proprietary trading network. Our miners could be manual traders, right? There's a lot of very good manual traders out there, but the best traders will probably be quant teams that are using AI to coordinate their strategies and execute them, right? So like there's levels, right? So it's kind of like manual traders, algorithmic traders, and then there's usage of machine learning in your trading strategy and using that to actually execute. And so there's a progression, and so you kind of get to that end progression, and those are the best miners. So pretty much on any of these subnets, there's some level of AI and to create the best commodity. And so that's why I think BitTensor will inevitably be, one of the most popular or biggest cryptocurrencies.
Interesting. And from the way I understand it is that essentially you have, so all these subnets are basically customizable by whoever decides to spin them up. They can kind of decide on like token mechanics and like, you kind of, create the rules of the game essentially that the miners have to play by. And then all these subnets benefit from the shared security provided by the underlying BitTensor blockchain. So is it similar or perhaps dissimilar to, things like EigenLayer or like Symbiotic, these restaking platforms that are also kind of enabling, like basically like restake these restaking platforms that are kind of offering shared security for people to launch their own protocols on top of, or is that not maybe the best way to think about it?
It actually wraps quite a bit, of work for us. I mean, the tokens are launched by the network. The infrastructure is maintained by the network itself. And simply, we just need to worry about incentive design, right? So when you think about like data scientists, quants, machine learning scientists, they just want to work on the problem. And that's all they have to come and do. So pretty much all of the crypto related problems of a network are obfuscated for us. We don't have to worry about any of that. We just have this, it's like a wrapper, and we just launched this incentive mechanism in the interaction with miners and making sure that we create it most effectively. And that's what I love about BitTensor, is that I don't have to worry about all the other components. I can just worry about creating the best commodity possible. So it does take away a lot of those complexities for us as a subnet owner, and lets us concentrate.
Got it. And then maybe just talk a bit about the role of the Tau token, and then I believe like each subnet can also like have its own native token as well, based on depending on how you choose to program it. But maybe talk a bit about just like the role of the Tau token with regards to aligning incentives and all of that, and then what are kind of the options for the subnet local tokens.
Yeah, so Tau is kind of the root token. It's the main token of the ecosystem, and then every subnet has its own token, and so you can essentially swap or stake your Tau to any subnet, and it has its own price against Tau and just generally against the market. So actually, the sum of subnets, the sum of all the subnets put together, can actually be greater than Tau, so it can actually exceed it. And so it's a really fascinating dynamic. It's a real marketplace of subnets and their individual values. And so you can actually swap your Tau into whatever ones you want to pick and choose you think are the most valuable. So yeah, every subnet has its own token. Tau is kind of the base token. It's kind of like when ETH first released, ERC20s, you could swap ETH to an ERC20. But in this case, it's more just staking. So you can just directly stake instead of swap. It's similar, but different.
Got it. And then you were mentioning that there's something over 120, 130 different subnets active at the moment. And maybe talk a bit about like just the types of applications that people are. I know we've kind of gone through a couple of examples, but like what are some of the types of applications that folks are building up on these? Obviously, you guys are doing a proprietary trading network. Other folks are doing kind of like compute and inference and stuff. But what are some of the what examples of these subnets have maybe found like pretty good traction or product market fit with the community?
Yeah, there's I mean, really, whatever commodity can be produced. There's one that's really fascinating in my opinion, which is Bitmind. It's SN34, and what they do is deepfake detection. So essentially, videos and being able to determine if they're AI generated or not, which is really important for today's society.
Yeah.
So you can essentially they just release an app. A mobile app, and so you can actually just download the app and then you can use it to determine if something is fake or not. You can do it directly on Twitter. They have a X, I guess now it's called. You can use their bot. They have a Bitmind bot, I believe it's called, and so that's a pretty useful product that's actually already created and launched. So I think that one, just speaks to, that's just one subnet of the 128 that exists, and that'll expand to 256, 1,024, et cetera. So it's going to continue to expand, but that one is a really cool use case, and a very specific use case.
Very cool. And speaking of use cases, I would love to dive into Taoshi, your project right now. Maybe talk through like just, what's kind of the origin story? What are you guys trying to build out here? And I know there's Taoshi and then there's Glitch, which is kind of like the final product, right? Or the commercial product. But maybe just give us kind of the elevator pitch here of what you guys are building.
Yeah. So as I kind of just mentioned in the beginning, my background in tech and software engineering, and then I got into quant trading and building my own strategies. Just figuring out that there's really a missing component here, which is essentially a decentralized prop firm. Traders want access to capital. They want to be able to not be restricted on the trading capacity that they can receive, and the rewards they can receive is essentially like if you're a quant, go launch a hedge fund costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in months of time and a bunch of regulatory burden, or just go compete on this one network, right? To release your strategy. So on our network, all these individual miners are teams competing, and they're competing by essentially placing direct trading signals, longing or shorting the market, and that's in forex, crypto, moving to commodities, adding equities, credit risk, and so essentially it's a full decentralized prop firm for miners to compete. And what we do is we take the best trading signals on the network, the best strategies, and we take it to market on Glitch. So Glitch is a SaaS platform that we've built where we realized that the best strategies are not accessible to most people, right? I mean, that's the reality. Accredited investors are the ones that get access to hedge funds, high-end strategies. They're really blocked off or restricted from getting access. And so our vision with Glitch is to allow as many people access to strategies as possible. Whether you want to start with $5,000 or $500,000, you can get started and essentially use these high-end strategies that we compose based off the signals from the network. So essentially, we have the signals coming in, we have models that learn from them, and then we release those strategies on Glitch for the public. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, so basically, like Taoshi is basically rewarding traders, incentivizing traders who are putting forth their best strategies, their most successful strategies, and then you're basically kind of compiling all those, kind of the cream of the crop, and then making those available to anybody, presumably through the Glitch app, essentially. So is that kind of the idea? Like, or am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. No, that's correct. The one caveat is that we actually take all the strategies on the network and we release singular strategies. So you can imagine, 200 and 200 forex miners, right, or traders on our network. We actually release a single strategy on Glitch, which takes essentially all of those strategies and combines it into one, which we call network models. So if you logged into Glitch today, you'll see that there's a beta network model for crypto and a beta model for FX. And essentially that's the culmination of the intelligence of the network in each market.
Got it. Okay. So it's not like there's a marketplace of, hundreds of different strategies to choose from. It's trying to be, I guess at the end of the day, maybe that's not really helping people too much. If it's like trying to, it's trying to pick something, watch on TV, and you have 1,000 channels you're flipping through, and you're like, well, how do I decide, right? But having something that's just like simple and streamlined that is kind of optimized for it's been battle tested, basically, is kind of the idea, right?
Yeah, if you think about it, even a team releasing one strategy, eventually the strategy will have some pitfalls, right? Whatever happens to the market. And so essentially, if you want to create the most robust strategy possible, you want it to use many strategies composed into one. And so that's the idea behind it was, after creating strategies for so long, I had all these different strategies. And it's like, well, what if I had me, but like times 200? In a tackling this one market. And so that's the idea behind it is, don't just use one single strategy, or allow the users to just select one option, and that actually is behind that strategy is 200 strategies. So it can better handle various market conditions, whether we end up in going into a bear market or a recession. We're always going to get the best output of the network.
Interesting. And then I know you have a background in both on the software side as well as in finance. And I would just like to know, like, what was like kind of the moment when you like had this light bulb like kind of going off your head realization that you could really unlock trading with like this type of decentralized AI infrastructure? Was there like, how did you kind of get to this point where you realize like, hey, this might be actually like a pretty killer use case?
Yeah, I mean, I was I was at the point where I had created the strategy, and I was at that fork where I was going to be like, okay, do I go create a hedge fund? Do I go through prop firms and just raise capital? And so there was these two different routes. And so, we were kind of already set, and I was like, what can we add to our existing strategy? Right. And I realized, if I go build on BitTensor, I probably get more strategies I could incorporate into our existing model. And so the idea was to actually get more signal. That was the idea behind it. Initially was, I bet you I can get more signals that I could provide to my existing strategy using BitTensor. And it essentially became morphed into this whole decentralized prop firm where, we are one of many competitors on our network. We mine our network, we compete on it just like everyone else does on a risk adjusted basis. So, at the end of the day, all of it pumps into Glitch and then surfaces to the customer. And then all of that value from Glitch goes back to our token. So all of the revenue that we generate from Glitch goes back to from our strategies from the network go back to our alpha token, as it's called, our Tau based token. So our goal is to create essentially a flywheel. The strategies get better because there's more rewards. The output to Glitch gets better, and we're able to onboard more and more users, and then all of that revenue goes back to the token, inevitably bringing more talent. So it's a complete flywheel in that way.
That's super interesting. The design of this whole thing is very elegant. I think, the more I'm learning about it, I think it's just like the more this whole ecosystem just really seems to. It's like, wow, like there's something of real value here that's being generated, right? And there's the mechanism for continuing to create new value, which is really cool. So on this show, we've been exploring a lot of this idea of like the new data economy and how kind of blockchain overlaps with that. And, this kind of perhaps like utopian notion that like data isn't just controlled by a handful of, centralized big tech platforms, but it's shared, stored openly, kind of used, monetized different ways. And I'm just kind of interested, like, how do you see, the BitTensor ecosystem, potentially Taoshi, like kind of overlapping with this like broader data economy vision? I mean, I know you've mentioned that there's a few subnets that are actually doing storage, right? And a few that are doing compute. But what do you see as maybe some of the overlap with, what something like Filecoin is trying to do on the decentralized storage front, and what you're seeing and what BitTensor enables?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, there are storage subnets. There are data scraping subnets. There are compute subnets. I mean, if you tie it all together, you could really build something quite valuable on top of it. And to get access to those networks, all you have to do is run a validator. And you can run a validator on a single subnet if you wanted. You just have to buy the alpha token. In terms of being able to get access and open up that access, it's simply running validators and then creating a service. So it's actually pretty straightforward. So I think it's going to contribute quite a bit, I believe, to the same world as Filecoin does. And I'd love to see more interaction. I think Hippias, which is one of the subnets, also contributes to storage. And I personally haven't dove enough into it, but I believe that it's a pretty robust system. And so I think, again, I just think there's going to be a lot of interaction there because all you have to do is run a validator to get access.
Interesting. And then, I mean, how do you kind of see? I mean, I guess you've been sort of knee deep in this intersection now of like decentralized AI and BitTensor and decentralized. I guess we'll call it decentralized finance, but it's not DeFi in the way that we typically use the term in crypto. But like, you guys are ultimately doing prop trading. But like, how do you kind of see this like intersection evolving in the coming years? It seems like if what you guys are doing is, if this works, like this really opens up. I mean, this really tears down a lot of like existing business models, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One, it's an incredibly competitive space. Like building a BitTensor, you feel the heat every day because you're fighting for emissions. You want a portion of those emissions, and you are going against a bunch of high quality teams that also want those emissions. And so it's all about tokenomics, right? So at the end of the day, what really drives BitTensor forward isn't the fluff, right? There's no more fluff. There's been a lot of useless things created in crypto. This is useful things. That's what BitTensor is about. And so you got to build flywheels and you got to build tokenomic models where you think about inflows and outflows, right? And so in terms of BitTensor kind of leveraging this idea of AI, it's just going to create better and better commodities that create more better, stronger flywheels, right? When we think about, like, as I said, just like SN8, like our subnet, the best miners are just going to be quant teams that are building ML models and ML machine. It's essentially building layers of signal to execution layers, and then take it to market as a miner on our network. And so that's all AI based. And so it's going to be like that as a miner on every sub network, pretty much. And so BitTensor is pretty much like perfectly placed to be at this intersection of real commodity production, real value production in crypto, mixed with AI. And it does actually, there are subnets that are doing direct AI training work. So like SN3 does decentralized training, Templar. That's what they've created. They have one of the most sophisticated, if not the most sophisticated, decentralized training model in the world. And so it's pretty impressive. So in terms of actually training models, you can do that on the network. In terms of using AI to create commodities, you can do that on the network. And I think that's also what really, again, I think that the fact that you can do so much on BitTensor is what makes it so powerful. And I think that the competition, it's so capitalistic in nature that you have to be able to create inflows. You have to create flywheels to be competitive. And so tokenomic design and figuring out how you're going to create, essentially positive net flows at the end of the day is everything.
As you're describing this, it sounds like it's like George, who's that Austrian economist, the creative destruction, like Joseph Schumpeter. Like Joseph Schumpeter, he coined the term creative destruction within capitalism, right? Where there's just something new that comes along and kind of keeps destroying the old thing, replacing it with something new and better. It feels like this is like that concept. I think he came up with that concept in like 1940 or something. So it just seems like it's that on steroids, or excessively amplified. Just maybe one final question here before we wrap up. But for the individual team or the trader, we've kind of alluded to this question. We haven't like addressed it directly, but like, ultimately at the end of the day, like why are they incentivized? How are they going to benefit more by participating in an ecosystem like this than they would, by doing their own hedge fund? Say like, okay, say if I had like $500,000 to spin up my own thing, like why, if that wasn't an issue for me, if that wasn't a blocker, like why would I want to consider participating in this economy versus, just spinning up my own thing and doing it the traditional way? Like what would be the tipping point there?
Yeah, I would say a few things. One, I was that person. I would compete in this network over doing that just because of the overhead. I mean, it's just a ton of work. It's not just the capital; it's the work and the time to maintain it, gather capital, etc. That's one. Two, I would say the rewards. I mean, the rewards are outsized in some of the subnets, and so there's a lot to try to capture, right? So when we look at just our subnet, in terms of rewards, it's, I believe, over $10 million annualized right now. And that's with some, I think Tau is down a little bit. So, when the markets go up, it's just going to go higher. And the other thing is, if you receive those rewards and you believe in what the network is producing, you're going to hold it because you think the price is going to go even higher, right? So as competition ramps and it gets more competitive and you can't compete anymore, right? You're getting outcompeted. It's one of those things where you're going to hold the token because it's going to get harder and harder to compete. So in terms of just those factors, you would want to compete on this network because it's easier to get started, right? We're like the wrapper for creating a hedge fund. Like you'd rather go compete here than go do that. However, if you wanted to eventually, say you had this extremely sophisticated strategy and you somehow believed you could make more, right, long-term creating your own hedge fund, you could leave. I mean, there's no one stopping you from leaving, right? But someone will fill your place because the competition gets so high. So competition will continue to maintain itself, especially as the rewards start. And you have a flywheel, right? So the glitch revenue pumping back in allows, I don't want to get too into the tokenomic design, but it allows us a layer of price support. So we're able to maintain a certain level of rewards. And so that maintains kind of this entire system working as we intended. So nothing to stop a miner from leaving and going to create a hedge fund. But at some point, as the rewards continue to go up, a top miner makes, $6, $10, $15, $20 million a year, can keep things very lean. and not deal with a lot of headache, they're a lot of them will choose that over going to deal with the headache and trying to go raise billions of dollars in capital. So
interesting. No, Arrash, I appreciate your time. This has been super interesting. One final question here, but for folks who are maybe either just learning about BitTensor, just hearing about it, or maybe they've heard about it, but they're not really sure. Okay, this seems pretty complicated. How do I just kind of dive in? Like, what's the best way to just sort of get smart fast on this quickly? What recommendations would you have?
Yeah, it's definitely a complex world because a lot of people don't understand that it's what BitTensor is 128 projects. So it's not that easy to really comprehend. But the best place to start, in my opinion, is just getting into the BitTensor Discord. So there's a Discord server. Just go jump in there and ask questions. That's what I did when I got started. And there are no dumb questions. There's such a great support team. The mods are wonderful. And they'll point you to resources to learn. And then directly inside that Discord is a channel for every subnet. So you can actually just go directly to each whatever channels are you're most interested in to go learn with. It's Bitmind with SN34, Shoots with 64, with Compute, for Targon with inference. There's so much, it's pretty much endless in terms of like what people are creating. And so few people, in my opinion, really know about it that are in crypto. They don't see like how sophisticated this is. This is very real, what's being created in terms of the commodities. So I would recommend getting into the Discord channel, poking around, asking questions. That's what I did when I got started, and everyone was extremely helpful. So that would be my recommendation.
Very cool. Yeah, that's great advice. And then just on the Taoshi glitch front with you guys over the next 6-12 months, anything on the roadmap we should be looking for?
A lot. We with glitch, we are actually just exiting beta here soon. And then we are becoming an RIA in the US. We're looking to disrupt Wealthfront, Vanguard, all of these kind of traditional kind of places you'd place your capital because we have real trading strategies. And so we're going to keep expanding and allowing more and more users to onboard. So we're really right now at the beginning stages of expansion, and that's going to be kicking over the next quarter. So we'll be in the US and anyone will be able to get access to it.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Arrash, really appreciate your time. And thank you for your eloquent explanation of all things BitTensor. Really appreciate it. Exciting what you guys are building with Taoshi. Wishing you the best of luck here in the coming months. So thanks, Arrash, again. And thanks, everyone, for watching. And we'll see you next time on DWeb Decoded.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me.